Hey everybody, Tony D with another hot take. This one's inspired by the Fourth Age. God, that guy does some really good videos about comics, I gotta say. And today's video, you should definitely check out if you're a comic guy and following the death of comics, because he has some very interesting insight. I'll summarize some of it here, but he is more eloquent than me. Basically, he says that the progressives are, their ideology is causing them to take heroes and turn them into villains. They make them behave like villains, and this is a very conscious decision on their part. I agree with his assessment of that, but I will add some to it. And here's what I'm going to add. I think it's the corporate structure that is driving this. And let me break down what I mean by that. Although the progressive ideology definitely plays a role, but it just happens to be in place, and this corporate ideology is pushing people to do this sort of denigrating of the old heroes, as it were, and the new heroes too, to some degree. So the reason I say that is, if you look at the evolution of Marvel Comics, and he mainly talks about Marvel Comics, Marvel, when it was run by Stan Lee, it was, I believe it was part of a bigger organization, a bigger company, but it was still run in a situation where, like, their profits mattered. There was a delineation between the corporate guys, the business guys, and the editors and the talent. There was delineations there that were pretty well made. Come here, doggy. You want to say hi? Come here. Always wait till I start the video. So during that era, you had editors who, did their job as editors of comics. They kept the continuity. They answered, fan letters. They kept the talent happy, and and everybody, and it worked for a large degree. Even though there were some elements of what would eventually take down comics in the end, there were still clear delineations. When we got into the 80s, and Marvel started to become more and more corporate in an attempt to make more money, be taken seriously in Hollywood, which was something they thirsted for a long time. Stan Lee went to L.A. in the 70s and was shopping around Spider-Man for a long time. He was trying to wheel and deal, make that deal. And, he had some success. I mean, there were early movies, there were early TV shows, certainly cartoons. But nobody really took superheroes or comics all that seriously. It was always comics. Maybe we'll do something for the kids. And that was their in. They would do like a kid's cartoon, or what they perceived to be like a kid's cartoon, like Spider-Man and Friends Hour, that kind of thing. So, but the traction for, say, the big movies, which, fans always wanted and people always talked about, and Stan talked about too, it didn't really happen. It took decades. As we got into the 90s, and keep in mind that these corporate entities, it's not where the money is from the businessman's perspective. The money's really in the merchandise. The money's really in Hollywood. Well, first Hollywood and then the merchandise. Although, Marvel had been merchandising for years. But they knew that if they could get to Hollywood, then the merchandise would go through the roof. What they kind of failed to understand was the moment that the guys in Hollywood realized that there was a ton of merch here to sell, they would just buy them out and get rid of them. Because that's what they do. They have way more money. So that's essentially what happened, right? I mean, eventually somebody caught on to, like, oh, there's a lot of money to be made here. Some businessman, I believe wasn't it Perlman at Revlon, who first bought into Marvel, and he nearly ran it into the ground because his strategy was to flood the market with comics and IPs in an attempt to dominate the market and drive out their competition. But what happened was comic book fans just, just didn't buy it all. All he succeeded really in doing was glut the market and hurt the overall sales, but make a lot of money in the short term, which he did. And then things nearly fell apart for Marvel after that. They required there was a whole big Save Marvel kind of thing going on where they had to pull it all together to make sure they didn't go completely bankrupt, which essentially I think they were for a time, but then they got saved because it was all about that potential. There was still a lot of potential here, still a lot of money to be made. So eventually, when you get to the very corporate era we have now, there is almost no distinction between the corporate guys calling the business shots, the editors, and really the talent at this point. A lot of the talent is corporate too. It's corporate talent. Because I think what happened over the years is as the corporate guys made more and more moves, realizing there's more and more money to be made, they would exert more and more influence over the editors. And the editors really didn't have any power in the corporate structure. They're just employees. So it's sort of do what we say or get lost. In the old days, there was more of an idea like, well, we can't just fire this guy because then we're going to lose all this money getting a new guy. The corporate guys of today see everybody as interchangeable. And that mindset, I believe, filtered down into the way Marvel ran its operation. Everybody's sort of interchangeable. Everybody's kind of disposable. We have different divisions. If you don't work out here, you'll work out somewhere else, or you just get another job. So we had this era during the 90s and the 2000s where I was, trying to break in at Marvel. And the running gag with me was every time I got a Marvel business card, the assistant editor would be fired within 2 weeks. And that happened like 3 times. I would hunt down these guys at a comic book convention, have a great conversation, talk about sending in my samples, got home the next day, send them in, and not hear anything back, and then, try to chase them down and then realize, oh, they don't work there anymore. And so, at least from my perception, they had a very high turnover rate with their employees. So you have a guy, and again, this is all my speculation and my opinion. This isn't, I don't know it all, although I have heard things from people who have worked in these positions that, evidence suggests that my speculation isn't that far off, but it is speculation, I will acknowledge that. But that a guy like Quesada essentially is just, oh, we lost this guy? All right, get another guy. And he would just plug and play as he saw fit because it was a very sort of punch the clock operation. Not as it had been in the past where talent was more of a driving force behind it, which is ironic considering how Quesada even got his job in the first place. I mean, he was really a talent-driven guy. He had gotten there. Him and Palmiotti were, the hot artist of the day. He turned that into more of a management position. Same thing with Lee and some of these other guys. And so I feel that, under the corporate structure, it's very much an idea like, well, we can always get talent, which is true up to a point. But that focus also focused more on the money-making aspects rather than, say, more critically acclaimed stuff, more than the creative. So there's a balance to be struck there. And I'm not suggesting that Marvel should be losing money on creative projects that are, high and mighty, stuff that only they should pursue as opposed to making money. I'm not. There's a balance to be struck there. There's a balance between, no, we can't put up with this guy. He's too crazy, even though he's a great artist. Between, yeah, just get me another artist, just find somebody on Tumblr to do it. But the corporate mindset pushes you to hiring cheaper and cheaper guys and doing stuff like, say, hiring artists off of Tumblr, just, who will work for nothing, so that'll just crank out product. And there were signs of this during the 2000s. There were artists that just cranked out product, and that's what they were known for. They worked at Marvel, they never missed a deadline, but they weren't great talents. The editors loved them because that made their job easier, and that's a focus on their job and their money, and not the actual product. And as you get more and more corporate, that's what happens. People focus more and more on punching a clock. Like, I don't really care about a corporate comic if I'm just there to, if I just have a job and I'm essentially just listening to you, my boss, and you force me to make a comic, and I say, well, gee, boss, this comic isn't very good. I don't know I could do much with this, and I just have to go, and your boss just basically says, well, no, just do it because, the guys upstairs want this comic to be a hit. I know going into it, I can only do so much, and that I'm probably going to get the blame when it fails. And that doesn't provide an atmosphere of building and growing and having a great time and, making good comics. It has an atmosphere of, well, I got to watch out for myself. And that corporate atmosphere doesn't work in a creative endeavor. It works against it, and you have to insulate your talent from it. Now, to some extent, your talent was insulated because they're all freelancers sitting at home drawing and writing. But, back in the day, they had the Marvel bullpen, which was a made-up thing. But there was an idea of camaraderie amongst the people there. And even Marvel today tries to do that with all the girls going for milkshakes. But that, I don't believe that's true camaraderie. I think that's more of a, let's show everybody we have camaraderie. I don't think that's real camaraderie-ness. I think it's all faux for the camera. I think it's for their Twitter feeds. I think it's for, the videos that Marvel is cranking out over and over again. There's no real sense that these people are actual friends. They're more work friends. I'll see you in the office tomorrow. And then they go off and say, I can't stand work. Because that's what you generally do when it's just work. When no one's invested, that's what happens. So why is Marvel Comics turning these heroes into villains? They're making them do villainous things. I think the order came down from on high that for this. Their real money is in the merchandising. That comes now from the movies. Which is also a big moneymaker too. So the MCU, all the major characters are done. They're done. They're over with. They're not going to trot them back out until they remake the movies, 20 years from now. And the corporate guys know this. So rather than try to keep those IPs around, there's no point in trying to keep those IPs alive from a businessman perspective. Those IPs are done, and we should shelve them and start with other stuff and then come back to those 20 years later, because that's the cycle. Because 20 years from now, the people who were kids today who saw the MCU will come out in droves with their kids to see the reboot of the MCU with all new actors and blah, blah, blah. So while you're sitting on that, you want to shelve that stuff. You want to just shelve it until you can just crank it out. And the over long-term arching thing from a corporation, I believe, like Disney, would be to create so much product, to own so many trademarks that you can literally just keep going back to your trademarks and take this stuff from 20 years ago, reboot it, remake it, put the next thing that came out in the pipeline and just keep rotating stuff. So you never have to go to your talent for anything other than, well, what's your take on this? Well, we own it. Come on, this is Marvel Comics. This stuff was created years ago. But your talent is to make it new again. That's the overall goal, because we've seen it in comics. And I've seen it in comics. I know of a big-time editor. He's a big-time editor. If I said his name, you'd know it. I asked him one time after pitching a comic for one of the big two with tons of new characters. His response was, they'll never approve it. And I said, why? He said, because the lawyers run the show. The lawyers don't want to fill out a bunch of trademark stuff. They don't want the expense of all these new characters. They don't want to pay you for these new characters. What they want you to do is take a character from 50 years ago that they already own and put a new take on it. Because that way, they don't have to pay you the royalties. That way, they can take, if it's a hit, then, hey, they make more money. And they don't have to pay the creator more money. They don't want new. What they want is stuff that they own. So I think the word came down on high to these editors. Listen, forget about the old characters. We got to, and I think they did this once before. They tried to make the old characters, they tried to push them aside for the new characters. It didn't work, keeping the old and new characters around. Everybody always drifts back to the original characters. So that the wheel turns and they get more and more drastic, trying to get you not to read the old characters, right? That's why I think they made Captain America a Nazi. They made him that because they wanted to make sure Captain America was done, that you wouldn't go back to him. They don't want to kill him off because they might have to go back and, revamp him, and they don't want to kill off the old sales, but they want to make sure basically that you won't read it anymore. They need to ruin it enough that you will read the new stuff because there's nothing else left to read. And it just so happens they're trapped in this get woke, go broke mindset that's currently hot and trendy, that the corporate guys, of course, see. They don't follow trends, they follow business. And right now, that's good business in their mind. But it's really not, and they haven't totally caught on to that. And it doesn't matter if they do, because they're looking far afield. They're looking at the movies. They just need stuff. Well, if it didn't work in the comics, we'll make it work in the movies. We'll just change it all anyway. So all that stuff with Snowflake and Safe Space, the guys who are really in charge, they don't have any problem taking those characters and making them some of the most incredibly anti-woke, sexist characters you've ever seen. If that's the trend going forward, which I believe it will be. It will be the trend. The trend won't be woke. The trend will be anti-woke, because the pendulum will swing back the other way. And once the money starts coming out of the anti-woke stuff, and maybe even the Tiger King is a sign of that, because Tiger King has got some pretty non-woke stuff in it if you haven't seen it. So as soon as that trend starts to hit, that's where they go. That's where the money is. Look at this Tiger King. Look at the numbers on this thing. This is insane. We have to get in on this. We have to get something in development like this. So all the woke people will just be done. They'll just be gone. But that's part of the reason I think they're destroying these characters. It's a corporate mindset. They're being pressured over and over again. Get us something new. Get us some more IPs that we could turn into TV shows and movies right now. We need some more characters for Phase 4 of Marvel. We need the next generation right now. No. We already did the X-Men. No. We already did the Avengers. We need more stuff. We need more content. Disney has now gone to the Disney Plus. They're going to be a content machine, or at least try to be, until the wheels fall off, I think. And I think the wheels will fall off with Disney Plus, because when you just become another channel on the internet, it doesn't work. And despite their amazing money and amazing influence, I don't think they can take over the internet. I really don't. Unless they're going to buy Google and YouTube and, buy it all, which I don't think they'll be allowed to do. I don't think they have the money to do it, especially now. They're fighting a losing battle. They're killing themselves with this Disney Plus, because once people go Disney Plus, then why am I going to go pay $20 in a theater to take my girlfriend to the movies or whatever? Or why am I going to spend like 50, $60 to go to the movies, take my family? I'm not going to do that. I'm going to watch it at home. And if you don't have it on Disney Plus, and it eventually goes on these other movie channels, I'll eventually get it. I'll eventually get it for $5. I'll wait. I'll wait. It's not that important. See, when you go out of the trend and it's not that important, people can wait. People can wait for the Mandalorian. I can wait for the Mandalorian. I can wait for a long time to see that. I'll wait till it's somewhere on the internet for like $1 or nothing. I'll watch it for nothing. I can wait. I can wait until you offer me that for free. I can wait until Hulu or Amazon Prime get it, or it ends up on Netflix 5 years from now or whatever. I can wait. People can wait, especially when they're broke. And so I think that's the corporate mindset trickling down. Now they're using progressivism sort of as a shield, if you will. And maybe some of these progressive people who have been hired really believe in the stuff. I think certainly some of the talent does, because they're usually the most clueless. But the actual editors, the actual people in charge, they're just doing what their corporate masters tell them to do, I believe. And their corporate master says, we need new stuff. Woke is the trend. Keep making it woke. Keep making it, crazy, and drive out all the old fans, because we need the new fans. We need the new stuff. New. That's the corporate thing. And they're botching it horribly because, before, what were they doing? They were just cranking out the same old stuff, the same variants on the old characters, which, doesn't sell great, but it sells better than this. So they've gotten rid of all their talent, because that creeps down into the talent too. Instead of guys like me who are going to like push back a little and say, well, why don't we come up with new guys? Or why don't we come up with a character like this or that? All this woke stuff doesn't work. No, they don't want that. They want people who are easy, who listen to instructions. And so you end up with these talent who are the same way too. It all trickles down. So now we have these progressive talent who actually believe this stuff. And they're terrible talents, in my view, because their political agenda is more important, and their virtue signaling is more important than actual craft. And consequently, they get hired by the editors, who see that as a win for them. They get patted on the head by the corporate guys. And partly because it's all about creating the IPs and not really making money, the corporate guys are fine with that, because they just see it as a money-making operation. They can always turn the corner as long as they own everything, which I believe they do now. So what's the answer? Well, there is no answer. My answer is boycott. Boycott the big two. Let them die, and start fresh with new comics. Anyhow, that's my rant. Check out The Fourth Age. It's really good stuff.